Hello and welcome to the Summary Soft Book Nook, a podcast about all things books, publishing, and more. My name is Emma, and today my guest is Rachel Dove. Rachel is an author. Now, before we get started, please take the time to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, or you can write us a review on Apple Podcasts. It will really help our podcast to grow. Now, on with the show. Thank you for coming on the podcast today, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So first things first, how did you begin your sort of writing journey?
I've always written since I was a small girl, and then in my 20s I started kind of taking it seriously. But for me, definitely as a working class writer, it was very much a case of fitting it around paid work and family commitments and everything. So I did self-publish a book in 2013, and that was kind of my first foray into publishing, because I wanted to take ownership of the book myself and actually see how the Amazon self-publishing program worked, and I kind of taught myself formatting and things. So I think that was a learning curve and like my first debut novel, which I'm really proud of. What really changed it for me is entering a competition in Prima magazine, which were looking for the next Mills and Boon flirty fiction writer. So I entered that competition, which was a free competition in the magazine that I get every month. I'm a subscriber to Prima, have been for years. So I sent off a chapter and a synopsis of this book that I already had in my head about two shop owners that don't really like each other in Yorkshire Village. And then I promptly forgot about it because I didn't think that I was going to get anywhere with it, because I never have before. I've never been shortlisted or anything like that. So that was my start, the competition.
That's great. As I said, that's just a sort of a sort of spur of the moment thing, isn't it? Just entering competition, going like, let's just go for it. Let's just
Yeah,
try.
that was it. Yeah, I just literally read it and thought, oh, I've got an idea that might fit with that. So I just literally just went home, worked on it for a couple of days, and just emailed it in. It didn't cost me anything. Didn't even cost me the price of a stamp, and I didn't think I'd get anywhere. So, but it's all good practice for competitions. So that's what I thought. It was just like a dream. Why not? You've got to be in it to win it kind of situation.
Yeah, I think sometimes just taking those risks is a really good idea. If you've got nothing to lose, you might as well just like, right, let's go for it.
Definitely, definitely. And it obviously, because it's like you've got to follow like a submission guideline as well.
Mm.
They're telling you what they want, so it gets you into the habit of looking at submission deadlines and guidelines as to what people want. So you're kind of getting the practice in there of laying your work out, exactly doing what if they want in a one-page synopsis, you're not sending them a three-page synopsis. So it kind of gets you into that mindset of getting your work ready to send out, even if it is a rejection in the end, it's still all practice.
Yeah, of course. So, kind of like going back to the self publishing topic that you talked about, how did you find the process of self publishing? Because I know it's quite a something that people either go, oh, this quite, I'd rather just take on the responsibility of my own book and, get a lot of creative freedom. Or some people go, oh, it's quite a big thing taking responsibility for. How did you find it?
For me, I think it was I just kind of wanted to get some feedback on my book. My family aren't a big set of readers, a lot of them. So it's getting the feedback when you're an early writer. It's getting used to sending your work out there. So I felt like my novel was polished as well as I could make it. So I just decided to take the plunge, and I just literally downloaded the Amazon free book, which tells you all about formatting, and then I just practiced, and then eventually I did it for a couple of other people as like a paid client basis when I was just starting out. So I'm very much self-taught in that. I think it's got pros and cons to each. With a publisher, obviously they are going to take the cost on. So obviously, if you're self-publishing, you have to pay for the covers. Normally, you have to pay for a professional editor. If you're traditionally published, then that's all taken away because they deal with the covers, they deal with the cost. They obviously publicise it for you if you get a good publisher that does actually publicise it, because that's not always the case these days. But I think the gap between self-published and traditionally published authors, for me, is getting narrower, because even traditionally published authors now, even the big names, they have to publicise their own work because they're there is just so many things out there, so many other people write books in their genre. So I do think in the today's day and age of social media, you do have to be very proactive yourself anyway. But I know a lot of self-published authors. I know a lot of hybrid authors, which are obviously traditionally and self. So I think there's pros and cons to each. For me, I had 2 small children at home. I was doing a lot of other things. I didn't have a lot of time. So for me, it was the creative control. It was me. I could log in. I could see how many sales I was doing, who was looking at what adverts were working, what publicity was working, what other people were doing. And it was a chance to get some feedback. And obviously then you can obviously tweak your book and change it. If everybody's telling you they hate the cover, then you can work on the cover. But again, a publisher will also do that as well. If they feel like something's not working, they'll tweak the metadata. They might change your cover, they might change your title. So I do think there's pros and cons to each. And there are a lot of self-published authors out there that I absolutely love and read auto by, same as traditionally published. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm very glad that I did it for my debut, because I kind of feel like I've got a debut from both sides of the world. I've got my debut, which is my self-published, and then I've also got my debut, which was the competition winner. So I'm glad I did it, and I will do it again if there is a book out there that perhaps doesn't sell that I've written. Then that obviously, unless it's a problem with the actual work itself, or then as long as it's a decent book and it's well written and it just maybe doesn't fit the market for now. Say like a vampire book. Obviously vampires are not in at the moment, but they were a few years ago.
Oh gosh, yeah, they definitely were.
Yeah, so yeah, I love them as well. Yeah, like devoured everything out there. But now, if I said to my agent, I want to write a vampire book, she'd be like, no, because they're not selling. So I do think that the readers are still out there. So if you're an independent author and you want to write about vampires or sex robots or whatever you want to write about, there are readers out there. And I think that side of self-publishing is brilliant, because then just because it's not perhaps market on trend, then you can still read them, because everybody still loves a vampire.
Yeah.
We just might not buy them as much as we did.
Yeah, of course. As I said, it's just changing habits and changing markets. So I guess it's always just about learning what is in at the time.
If your book's well written, you've got a good cover that people like, it's engaging, everything, you've got your social media sorted, and you're kind of building your own brand. I don't think it really matters whether you're traditionally published or self-published. You still have to put the work in. You still have to write the books. You still have to kind of follow market trends. But with self-publishing, obviously, if you're flogging a book for a year and your agent can't sell it, it might be the best book in the world, but if it's not, if it's a vampire book, for example, it's not going to sell at this moment. But self-publishing it, there are thousands of readers, millions of readers out there that still love the vampires, so they will buy it. So it's kind of a way of bypassing certain types of market, I believe, with the self-publishing. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously, just before I was looking at sort of doing a bit of research, and obviously some of your books have recently sort of gone to digital first print. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Do you think that's sort of a way that books are going to go? I think I've noticed that a lot more sort of bigger publishers are trying this sort of digital first angle for imprints and things like that, because it makes it a lot easier to sort of maybe get books out faster and more widely available for people just to download straight away. Do you think that's quite a big factor now in a sort of a lot of writers wanting to publish their books?
I do think that digital first is kind of the big thing at the moment. Yes, definitely. Obviously my publisher's got a lot of imprints, so I'm with HQ Digital. But they have also got the Harper Impulse, which is now turned into One More Chapter, and they are very much digital first. Avon's, I can't remember if they've changed the name or they're just building a digital first imprint and moving some of those over. So yeah, I think with ebooks, obviously, a lot of the time the ebooks come out first and then the paperbacks follow. So, and a lot of them are now on-demand paperbacks.
Yeah, there are a lot of them POD, so they sort of print on demand paper.
Yeah, so some of mine, like my debut was in supermarkets, in Waterstones, WH Smith, like Asda, but nowadays mine are like more print on demand, and that's down to, well, one thing the supermarkets shelving time, because there's not, if you notice, especially in Morrison's, the shelving for books is absolutely, it's gone down to half. So everybody's fighting, and obviously they want the big names on there as well, the ones that sell millions, like James Patterson, for example. He is always going to be in the supermarket because he sells so many and he's so popular. So I do think that for like the middle-list authors and the authors that are like digital first and things, it is harder because there's just not enough space, and everything costs money, and publishers got to back you with money, and there's only so much money out there. Not every book's got a publishing budget. So I do think that digital first is a better way to get out there, and I also think that more authors are getting taken on as a result, because they don't have to have so much money behind them. But again, it's all down to the publicity as well, because then you're not going to get the big publicity campaigns. You are going to have to do a lot yourself. But I think that's just the reality of writing today.
Yeah, of course.
J.K. Rowling, and that's what we need to kind of get out there, that it is very much a job. We have to work hard for our money, and the markets are ever decreasing. So it is basically, it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've spoken to people obviously who work in sort of the digital first imprint, especially like, you know, companies like publishers like Canelo, who are obviously digital based publisher.
Yes.
And I think it's probably, in my sort of looking into it, is that it's more of a quick turnover, if that makes sense, in terms over time. So books, you can literally just get the book, edit it, do what you need to do, rely on the author publicity, and then you can quickly put out that book and then move on to the next one. And I know that sometimes there's quite a big, huge amount of back catalogue of like books to get out. So I guess they're constantly relying on submissions to sort of get those books out into like the publishers are. So I think it definitely is moving forward that way. I can definitely see it sort of going bigger.
Like, yeah, it's a case of a smaller pot of money, but spread over more authors kind of thing. So instead of having maybe 10 front runners, they give everybody a chance, kind of. So everybody's like, who has been taken on the digital imprint, they kind of get the same thing, but they might not get the marketing budget, but they do have like a team that are there, and they get the work, they make sure that the books are out there that the readers are wanting. So there's already readers there. So yeah, with the digital imprint, I do think it is that it's more fast moving. And also writers, I think nowadays, if they can write more than one book a year, I think that's a big plus point as well.
Yeah, and you've got those guidelines as well. So if you kind of stick to like what exactly, which is good, because I guess if you've got a lot more choice about what you want to write, I mean, for example, I was doing some research last night on submissions for a particular book. I'm thinking about maybe starting writing a book at this stage.
Oh, brilliant.
I know. I was inspired by something. I did like a screenplay for my course, and I'm thinking about turning it into a novel because it was part of a bigger story. But yeah, we'll see how it goes after dissertation. We'll cross that bridge first.
Yeah.
But it's like what kind of book you want that publisher to cater to. So if you're like, I don't know, for example, you want to write a romance novel, and you've got some ideas of where you want to send it, and then you go and have a look, most publishers will have those submission guidelines. Yeah. So you've got a lot more choice in terms of where you want to send your book now, or to what agents. So
yeah, because there's just so many more smaller publishers out there. Obviously, like Hera Books, they're just a year old now, but they're putting out some absolutely cracking novels.
Yeah.
Because obviously the people that are behind it are from the bigger publishing houses, so they've learned the business, and they're kind of setting up on their own. So it's another avenue, and I know authors that they've gone to there and are really happy. So that's like an example. Canelo was another one who puts out fantastic covers, and they do a lot of marketing. Bookachaw, again, obviously my publisher, HQ Digital. So it does give you a platform out there. And today in social media, it's really about the author getting to know the readers as well. Because it's different now. You're not sat in a turret, and you're never going to perhaps see people unless you're at a book signing. Like, people can actually contact you now and say, I loved your book. Like, what's next?
Yeah, of course.
Check in, which is good. Obviously, it has its negative side as well, as all social media. But personally, I find it a really positive experience. And I actually do put questions on Twitter like, if I've got an idea in mind, like a little kernel of an idea, I might put something on Twitter that's maybe not, obviously not giving the whole plot away. Like, I'm going to write a book that says this. Would you read it? But you can actually go out there and ask your readers like what they think about this thing, like what they want to hear. You can read online about what they're kind of reading, what they're liking, what they're enjoying. So I do think that digital first, obviously, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And it does give a platform for a lot more writers. And the whole working class writer thing as well, it's a lot better with the submission guidelines, because you can literally just send it in an email instead of sending full books through the post, or it's like postal cost, because writing costs money and not everybody has like infinite free time and flexible income to sit and write. Some of these people really need these books out. So with digital first, there's always an income because of like you say, the turnaround of the books, and then obviously your new book comes out and it sells your backlist because they might not have heard of you before, and then they might read your new books, having seen it on Twitter, for example, and then think, well, I enjoyed that. What else has she written?
Yeah.
And then obviously that's when they're going to Amazon and looking in the works bookshops for your books.
Yeah,
so I do think definitely the trend is changing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on that, I definitely think that it's made definitely more authors now. It's made it accessible for a lot of people that maybe thought they wouldn't write a book before, because what I noticed is that a lot of authors aren't, obviously they're not full-time writers. A lot of them obviously have day jobs or part-time work or anything. Some people obviously people got kids and stuff as well, so it's fine, because as I said, I'm currently a student and I have like a part-time job, so it's very hard to try and balance everything. So it's just the reality of the situation. I definitely think that that's good, that's fine, you've got time to write.
It is, and with the diversity that's currently going on in the dialogue around publishing, is that more they're wanting these writers to come out more. They're wanting, for example, I've got two children who are both autistic, so to hear their own voices, books that are coming out from autistic people and people with Asperger's and people with different medical conditions. Like one of my friends writes about chronic illness because she's a sufferer of chronic illness herself, and she's just written a book featuring a heroine with chronic illness. And I just think that's brilliant, because these stories just need to be told. And also the working class writers like Kerry Hudson, who's just written the Lowborn book, which I'm absolutely devouring at the moment. It's about her working class roots and how she's moved away from it all. And I do think that there's more of an appetite for things like that. And we are waking up to the fact that not all writers are kind of the Barbara, especially in romance, we kind of get this stigma that we're all kind of plumpish Barbara Cartland types. Like the Little Britain sketch, where she's sat like dictating on a shay-long and eating bonbons, and you just think that's not it. We're like, there's people out there with jobs, they're carers for people, they've got families, they've got husbands, they teach, they lecture, they're selling short stories. And obviously because the incomes are going down with the writing as well, because less people are getting advances and we're moving into more digital first, no advances, higher royalties kind of era, then it is more accessible, and people are realising that not everybody is like a middle class writer that can afford just to turn out one book a year and quite happily do that. And I'm not knocking those at all. I just think there's room for everyone. But yeah, there definitely is like some stigma that we need to fight, especially around the romance. But yeah, the fact that people can actually go and just make their dream come true by sending an email from a library, which costs them nothing, with their book submission in, I think it's brilliant. So I'm all for that, because I think everybody deserves a chance to follow the dream.
Exactly, that's great. So kind of moving on, I know we talked about that for ages. That was really good, actually. Maybe once you get started, then you can't stop, can you?
Box thing, yeah.
Yeah, I know. So obviously about your writing, kind of going back to that, how was your writing process? So are you a person that can just put words on paper, or do you have to plan, or do you just sort of stagger your writing?
I'm kind of a what kind of class as a pantser, so I kind of I'll work to a synopsis. I'm more character based, and to be honest, I'm a little bit of a terror for preferring to write male characters than the female ones. I don't know why. I just tend to focus on the male characters rather than the female ones, and often I get said this is like, he's not the main character, kind of toning back, but I think that's just myself. But I tend to work from a synopsis and more of a kernel of an idea, and I might have 2 or 3 scenes that come into mind. And titles as well. Titles are a real big thing with me. I've managed to keep all my titles so far, which I'm really glad about. So for me, it's just more of a kernel of an idea. So it could be just literally a fully formed character that pops into your head. When I wrote The Long Walk Back, Cooper, the main character, he's actually the main character. He just popped into my head one day, and I kind of worked the story around him. With other things, I've just done it from a title or from a setting, and kind of thought, well, who would kind of live there? So I've lost track of the question now.
No, just talking about your process. So how obviously you just like start getting. Obviously, you're saying that you use your synopsis to sort of springboard your writing.
Yeah, so I kind of get an idea and then work around that. But I tend to do character profiles for each book. So I'll write a whole character profile out down to eye colour, any scars they've got, and then I update it through the book. So if they have a fight and one of them gives each other a black eye, for example, which obviously doesn't happen much in my books because they're romance rather than crime, but then I'll update that. So I tend to flesh out my character as much as possible, and also do location profiles, because I do think that location is really important for the book and the setting. So I do tend to do little maps and things like that. But other than that, it's very much applying the seat, like the bottom to the seat, and kind of getting on with it. I love seeing people on Instagram, like fellow writers, with all these big whiteboards out with like post-it stuck everywhere and everything, and like lots of stationery, and I just think I'd love to be able to write like that, but I just can't. I don't know if it just stifles the creative process for me, but I'm definitely like a pantser, to be honest with you.
I was watching half the reason I was watching that Jane the Virgin episode the other day, and she was writing her book, and like she had to redo this entire plot because this editor was like, this part of the book isn't like working, and she had all like this paper out, all these like post-it notes, and then one thing unraveled. It just reminded me of that, like completely just like people just going, I've got all this paper, slowly freaking out, there's one thing that impacts another thing, and yeah, there's just so many avenues.
I can't do that. I can't even use Scrivener. I've tried to download Scrivener before and tried to use that, because a lot of writers talk about that, but I find that it really messes with my head. I need to write from start to finish, and that's how I write. So I open a Word document, chapter 1, and then I start. If I really, really can't get a scene out of my head, I'll write it in a notepad, but I will save it, and then I will type it up in the relevant part, and that's just how I work. It's a very linear way of working. I don't know if it's due to my teaching and the fact that I rebel against all the paperwork as from my old job, but yeah, I'm very much a pantser, and I'm a notebook keeper and character profiles. But like the post-it notes and the whole whiteboard thing, I think that'd just make the whole process more confusing for me, so I don't do it. But hats off to them that do, because it does makes it look easier.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I'm kind of headphones on, rock music in my head, and then I just kind of get it down on the page.
Yeah, I have this really weird sort of way of starting writing, and that's listening to music. I actually use music to actually tell a story, which I was talking to someone about a couple of weeks ago, saying that we were talking about movies, and I think my partner talked about how this Marvel director used music to think about how he wrote the story before he even sort of things. So I thought that was quite an interesting way. But I guess every writer's different, like how they even begin writing.
I make Spotify playlists for each book.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I just use them for myself. So if I'm doing a certain book, I will research songs that make me think of certain scenes or are reminiscent of certain scenes, and then I write them with the music on. So if I'm doing an emotional scene, I often listen to like tear-jerking music, like power ballads.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like that. If I'm writing quite an angry scene, I'll play kind of Limp Bizkit type things, and then if I'm really just feeling angry about the fact that I just don't want to be sat at the chair writing, which sometimes happens, I'll put the rock music on, and that always kind of cheers me up. So yeah, I definitely think music does that. One of my author friends who writes for Penguin, Roxy Cooper, she actually makes playlists for hers as well, and her latest novel is there's music really interspersed in the book, and I like the way that she's done that because that's very much the way I work as well. So that's a good one to check out.
I'm not alone then.
No, no, definitely not. No, Spotify playlists all the way with the headphones on, especially with the kids at home as well. So, because obviously it's quite hard to switch off because you're kind of working in your house as well. So it's not as easy as going to an office and working perhaps. So yeah, on a weekend if the husband's home, the headphones are on, and then everybody else just kind of melts away, and that's it. They just bring me food every now and again.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, you just kind of like don't sing, but I might sing.
Oh no, I sing, I do
Yeah.
air guitar a lot. I'm quite embarrassing, to be
It
honest.
makes it go so much better as it makes you work so much better.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Sometimes the words flow, and then other times it doesn't. But I always also never finish a chapter and then leave my desk because that's like the kiss of death for the next day. I'll leave a scene midway through a sentence because I find that much easier to pick up. If I finish a chapter and I'm due to start a new chapter, it wastes like a whole half hour because I'm just so mad at myself and then I can't think what to write. So if I'm in the middle of a chapter, that's how I always tend to leave it because then it's much easier to pick it up the day after.
That's great. Well, finally, this question, as I said, we talked about briefly at the beginning. What is a book that you have read recently that you would like to recommend?
Well, this is a book that I have read recently. I absolutely loved it. It's in my top 3 for 2019, and it's actually a book from Bookerchar. So I'm sorry, my publisher HQ Digital, but it's by Emma Robinson, and it's called My Silent Daughter. And it's basically about a mother who is trying to get help for her daughter who has autism. That's all I'll say because I don't want to spoil any of the book because it's heart-wrenching and beautiful. And I just think that it's really relevant for today and it's written so well. And being a mother of autistic children, sometimes you read things and the media tends to have there's kind of like a division at the moment in the autistic community, and I just think that books like this, even though it's not a known voice as such, she is a teacher and she absolutely nails the subject matter, and it's just a beautiful book. And I kind of wish that every school parent in the yard was like handed a book like this to read like on the first day that their child starts school, because I do think these books need to be told. So that's my definite recommendation. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's only on it's in Kindle and audio and paperback as well, so whatever format you have, it's there, it's out there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We had a really good conversation, which is always great. So,
no problem. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. You can follow Rachel on Twitter at WriterDove. If you'd like to be involved with the podcast, you can get in touch through Twitter at NovelM16 and use the hashtag Slothcast. Or you can send me an email at summerslothbooknook@gmail.com. You can always find our podcast on our YouTube channel, Summersloth Book Nook, or download from Podbean and Apple Podcasts for an on-the-go experience. See you next week. Bye!